I need a driver, not a sermon, Claire Whitmore said, and every person under the glass awning of the Halston Grand Hotel seemed to hear it. Rain fell hard over Manhattan that morning, silver and restless, tapping against black umbrellas, sliding down the doors of idling town cars, turning the curb into a narrow river of headlights and impatience. Claire stood at the center of it all in a navy coat, one hand gripping her phone, the other holding a leather folder that carried the future of Whitmore Mobility. At 10 a.m. she was supposed to sign a merger that would save her company from collapse. At 9:12 her private driver was gone, her board was calling every 2 minutes, and Marcus Hale, her chief financial officer, stood beside her with a smile too calm for a crisis. Claire, just take a temporary driver, Marcus said. Someone cheap. Someone available. He wore a faded brown jacket, work boots, and the tired face of a man who had already lived a full day before breakfast. Lily had a hospital sticker on her sleeve and a stuffed rabbit tucked beneath her arm. Ethan closed her door gently, the way careful men do when the whole world feels breakable. Ethan looked up. Ma'am. I need to be at Whitmore Tower, then at Conrad Financial, then downtown. 3 hours. I'll pay triple. He glanced at Lily through the rain-streaked window. I'm not on shift. Then consider this your shift. Her voice was sharp, practiced, expensive. I don't need conversation. I don't need opinions. I need a driver who knows how to move through this city faster than traffic and slower than trouble. Ethan held her gaze for one quiet second. No anger. No embarrassment. Just stillness. Yes, ma'am, he said. Marcus smirked as if the matter were beneath him. Claire slid into the back seat beside Lily, barely noticing the child's polite little smile. Ethan started the engine, pulled into traffic, and let the wipers cut clean lines across the windshield. The car smelled faintly of coffee, rainwater, and crayons. Claire opened her folder, scanning the merger schedule, her jaw tight enough to ache. Ethan said nothing for 12 blocks. He changed lanes before the congestion appeared, turned west before the sirens, avoided a stalled delivery truck before Claire even saw it. Then, at a red light on Madison Avenue, his eyes lifted to the rearview mirror and landed on the black SUV following 2 cars behind them. His voice stayed low. The man about to destroy your company isn't waiting at the meeting, Ms. Whitmore. Claire froze. Ethan looked back at the road. He's in the car behind us. Claire did not turn her head at first. Pride moved faster than fear in women who had spent years being tested by rooms full of men waiting for them to blink. She kept her eyes on the merger folder, though her fingers had stopped moving. You are a temporary driver, she said, each word clipped and cold. Do not invent drama to make yourself interesting. Ethan eased the sedan through the green light, calm as church bells after a storm. I am not inventing anything. Then explain yourself. Black Escalade. New York plates. Same vehicle was outside the Halston when you came out. It missed 2 open turns to stay behind us. Claire looked toward the side mirror before she could stop herself. 2 cars back, dark windows, clean chrome, patient distance. Marcus had taken a separate vehicle, claiming he needed to make calls to the board. Her phone buzzed again in her lap. Marcus Hale. She let it ring. Lily watched from the other side of the back seat, small hands folded around her stuffed rabbit, her eyes moving between the powerful woman and her father with the quiet awareness children learn when life has made them grow up gently but early. Daddy notices things, Lily said softly. Claire glanced at her, then back at Ethan. Does he? Ethan's voice remained even. Only when they matter. Claire answered the call and put it on speaker before she fully understood why. Marcus's polished voice filled the car. Claire, where are you? The board is already irritated. Conrad Financial moved the signing up to 10:30. We cannot afford delays. Why was the time changed? She asked. Pause, almost nothing, but Ethan heard it. Because Conrad has another bidder waiting. You know this. No, Marcus. I know what you told me. Rain thickened on the windshield, blurring the city into streaks of gray and gold. Ethan turned onto a narrower street lined with brownstones and delivery vans, avoiding Park Avenue entirely. Claire noticed. Whitmore Tower is east. Not anymore, Ethan said. 53rd is locked for construction and 2 lanes are closed near Lexington. Navigation says it is clear. Navigation is 12 minutes behind. Marcus laughed through the phone, smooth and sharp. Is that your driver talking? Claire, please do not let a man with a steering wheel manage a multi-billion-dollar transaction. Ethan said nothing. That was the thing that bothered her most. He did not defend himself. He did not perform. He simply drove, hands steady at 10 and 2, eyes reading movement before it happened. Claire hated how useful his silence was becoming. She ended the call without saying goodbye. How did you know about the lane closure? Because cities talk before screens do. That is not an answer. It is the only one you need right now. She gave a dry laugh. Every driver in Manhattan thinks he is a philosopher. Ethan turned left, smooth enough that Lily's rabbit barely shifted. No, ma'am. Most of us are just trying to make rent. The words landed quietly, without accusation, and that made them harder to dismiss. Claire looked down at her folder again, angry at Marcus, angry at the rain, angry at this stranger for making her feel judged when he had not judged her at all. A message from her assistant appeared on her tablet with the revised merger packet attached. Claire opened it, scanning legal language she had already reviewed twice the night before. Ethan's eyes flicked once to the rearview mirror, then to the tablet reflected faintly in the glass. His jaw tightened. Do not sign that version. Claire looked up slowly. Excuse me. Page 46. Voting control language. You read backward through a mirror while driving? Only enough to see what changed. Her lips parted, but no answer came. In the side mirror, the black Escalade turned when they turned. Ethan pulled to the curb beneath the shadow of Whitmore Tower, rainwater running in silver lines down the windows. He put the car in park and finally looked back at her. Ms. Whitmore, someone moved the knife from the table to the contract. Claire stared at him, her anger thinning into something colder. For the first time that morning, she was not looking at a driver. She was looking at a warning. Claire stepped out beneath the polished canopy of Whitmore Tower with the merger folder pressed against her chest like a shield. The rain had softened to a mist, but the morning still felt heavy, as if the whole city were holding its breath above the avenue. 2 security guards opened the glass doors for her, their eyes sliding past Ethan as though he belonged to the weather and not the building. Lily followed close to her father, backpack over one shoulder, stuffed rabbit tucked beneath her arm, her sneakers squeaking softly against the marble floor. Inside, the lobby rose 40 stories high, all chrome, stone, and cold blue light. A wall of screens showed Whitmore mobility vehicles moving through digital streets, perfect little dots gliding across perfect little maps. Ethan stopped for half a second, just long enough for something old to pass behind his eyes. Claire noticed, but she did not ask. You can wait here, she said. I will have someone bring payment. Ethan nodded. Before you go upstairs, read page 46 again. I heard you the first time. Then hear me a second time. Her expression hardened. You do not know my company. Maybe not. He looked up at the screens. But I know when a system has been designed to make a transfer look like protection. The elevator doors opened with a clean silver chime before Claire could answer. Marcus Hale stepped out, surrounded by 2 attorneys and a young assistant carrying a stack of bound contracts. His charcoal suit was dry, his smile was dry, even his concern felt dry, polished into something presentable. Claire, thank goodness. Conrad is already upstairs. The board is waiting. His eyes moved to Ethan, then to Lily, and his smile bent slightly. And you brought your driver inside. How generous. Claire said nothing. Ethan lowered his gaze, not in shame but in restraint. Lily moved closer to him. One of the attorneys gave a small laugh under his breath. Temporary staffing is getting very inclusive these days. Marcus tapped the folder in Claire's arms. Come on. We do not have time for distractions. Distractions sometimes tell the truth, Ethan said quietly. Marcus turned back, amused. What was that? Ethan met his eyes. Nothing you need to fear if the contract is clean. The lobby seemed to still around them. The fountain near the reception desk whispered over black stone. A receptionist stopped typing. Claire felt heat rise under her collar. Not because Ethan had embarrassed her, but because Marcus had gone too still. Claire, Marcus said softer now. This is exactly why the board worries about you. You let emotion walk into business. Ethan did not answer. He crouched to tie Lily's loose shoelace. his fingers moving with patient care while powerful people stood above him pretending patience was weakness. Claire looked at the elevator, then at Marcus, then at the folder. "We are going upstairs," she said. Marcus smiled in relief. "Good. But I am reading page 46 before I sign anything." The smile flickered. Only once. But Ethan saw it. They rode up in silence, all of them reflected in the elevator walls. Claire in her tailored coat, Marcus with his perfect tie, Ethan in his worn jacket, Lily holding a rabbit with one missing button eye. When the doors opened onto the executive floor, the air smelled of coffee, printer ink and expensive flowers. Through the glass wall of the boardroom, men and women in dark suits turned as Claire entered. Someone whispered. Someone checked a watch. Ethan and Lily remained in the hallway beside a row of leather chairs, invisible again until one of the assistants handed Claire the final signature packet. The wrong packet. Ethan saw the blue tab on the side. He saw the revised footer. He saw the line Marcus had hoped would pass under pressure and polite smiles. He took a pen from the reception desk, tore the corner from an old visitor badge, and wrote 5 words in small, steady letters. Clause 17B transfers control. He folded the paper once and placed it in Lily's hand. "Give this to Ms. Whitmore," he said. Lily looked up at him. "Is she in trouble?" Ethan watched Marcus close the boardroom door behind Claire. "Not if she stops pretending she is alone." Lily walked toward the boardroom door with the folded paper pinched between her fingers, so small beneath the glass walls and silver nameplates that no one noticed her at first. Inside, Claire stood at the head of the long walnut table while the board watched her with the tired impatience of people who had already decided courage was inconvenient. Marcus sat 3 chairs to her right, hands folded, face calm, the final signature packet open neatly before her like a trap wearing a clean suit. "We have reviewed this long enough," said Warren Pike, the oldest board member, his voice rough from decades of cigars and boardroom wars. "The market opens fully in less than an hour. Either we sign or we bleed." Claire held the pen but did not lower it. On the page in front of her, the language looked harmless, wrapped in legal softness, built to soothe the eye and numb the mind. Strategic protection. Temporary voting adjustment. Emergency continuity provision. It was the kind of language powerful people used when they did not want ordinary people to understand what was being taken from them. Marcus leaned forward. "Claire, the board needs certainty." "I need truth," she said. The room stiffened. Just then the door opened a few inches. Lily slipped in, cheeks pink from nervousness, her stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm. A junior attorney moved to stop her, but Claire raised one hand. "It is all right." Lily walked to the table and placed the folded paper beside Claire's water glass. "My dad said you should see this." Marcus exhaled sharply. "This is ridiculous." Claire unfolded the paper. 5 words. Clause 17B transfers control. For a moment, the room made no sound except the soft hum of the lights and the faint hiss of rain against the windows 70 floors above Manhattan. Claire looked down at the contract. Then she turned the pages slowly. 43, 44, 45, 46. Her eyes moved line by line. Her face changed so little that anyone careless would have missed it, but Ethan, watching from the hallway through the glass, saw the exact second the truth reached her. The pen stopped being a pen. It became evidence. "Marcus," she said, quiet enough that everyone leaned in. "Why does Clause 17B transfer operational voting control to Conrad Financial immediately upon signature while leaving all public liabilities with Whitmore Mobility?" Marcus blinked once. "It is a standard continuity safeguard." "No," Claire said. "Standard safeguards expire after review. This does not." One attorney cleared his throat. "Technically, the language does allow for an extended control period." "How extended?" Claire asked. No one answered. She looked at Marcus. "How extended?" Marcus smiled, but there was strain under it now. "Claire, this is not the time to let some lobby driver scare you with half-read legal language." Ethan remained outside the room, one hand resting gently on Lily's empty chair. He did not look offended. He looked sad, as if he had seen this kind of pride ruin better people than Marcus Hale. Claire saw that sadness through the glass, and for the first time shame touched the edge of her anger. Not shame because she had been challenged. Shame because she had almost signed away the lives of thousands of workers while dismissing the only man who had warned her. Warren Pike adjusted his glasses and stared through the glass toward Ethan. His weathered face lost color. "Wait," he whispered. The room turned slightly. "What is it?" another board member asked. Warren stood with one hand on the table, looking not at Claire, not at Marcus, but at the quiet man in the worn brown jacket beyond the door. "That handwriting," he said, voice thinning with disbelief. "That margin style. I have seen it before." Marcus snapped. "Warren, sit down." But the old man did not sit. He took one careful step toward the glass, like a man approaching a memory he had buried and prayed never to meet again. Ethan looked up. Their eyes met. The rain kept sliding down the windows. The city kept moving below them. And Warren Pike said the name that made the entire boardroom go still. Walker. Claire did not repeat the name. She did not need to. The way Warren Pike had spoken it changed the air more than any speech could have. Marcus's fingers tightened around his pen, the junior attorneys looked at one another, and every board member slowly turned toward the glass wall where Ethan Walker stood in his rain-darkened jacket, holding his daughter's backpack like any tired father waiting for a long morning to end. Claire opened the boardroom door herself. Not her assistant. Not security. Herself. "Mr. Walker," she said. And the title sounded different now, careful around the edges. Ethan looked down at Lily, then back at Claire. "You should finish your meeting. I think you just became part of it." Marcus rose too quickly. "Claire, this is absurd. We are not inviting a hired driver into a confidential executive session because Warren thinks he recognizes handwriting." Warren did not look away from Ethan. "I do not think." "I know." Ethan's face remained still, but something in his eyes closed a door. "A lot of people knew me a long time ago." Claire stepped into the hallway, lowering her voice. "Who are you?" "A father trying to get his daughter home." "That is not an answer." "It is the only answer that still matters to me." The hallway quieted around them. Far below, horns moved through wet traffic like distant geese. On the executive floor, the scent of coffee and lilies from the reception table seemed suddenly too clean, too arranged, too far removed from the lives affected by what was being signed behind glass. Lily slipped her small hand into Ethan's. "Daddy," she whispered. "It is okay." He looked at her with such gentleness that Claire felt something inside her shift. She had spent 10 years learning how to read men who wanted power, men who wanted praise, men who wanted access. Ethan wanted none of it. That made him harder to understand. "You saw Clause 17B in a reflection," Claire said. "You tracked Marcus's car. You knew the traffic pattern before the city system updated. You recognized a control transfer most of my legal team missed. That is not luck." Ethan gave a faint, tired smile. "Luck is what people call preparation when they do not respect the person holding it." The words landed without cruelty, and somehow that made them heavier. Claire looked back into the boardroom. Marcus had moved to the window, speaking quickly to one of the attorneys. Warren still stood, pale and shaken, as though a ghost from another era had walked in wearing work boots. Claire pulled out her phone. "Tell me what to search." "Do not. Tell me." Ethan's voice dropped. "Ms. Whitmore, some histories do not need to be reopened just because a room becomes curious. This is no longer curiosity." She searched his name before he could stop her. "Ethan Walker. Smart Transit. Walker Grid." The results appeared in a flood of old articles, archived interviews, federal transportation panels, photographs from Washington, Detroit, Chicago, Los Angeles. There he was, younger, clean-shaven, standing beside governors and engineers, pointing at maps of traffic systems that had once been called impossible. One headline held her still. "The architect behind America's smart transit revolution vanishes after family tragedy." Claire's thumb hovered above the screen. She did not open the article. Not yet. Some truths deserved permission before exposure. She looked at Lily, then at Ethan. "You built Walker Grid." Ethan stared through the windows at the gray city beyond. "I helped build a version of it. Whitmore Mobility runs on licensing paths descended from that system." "I know." "Then why are you driving a weekend ride service in a sedan with 200,000 miles on it?" Ethan looked back at her, and for the first time that morning, his quiet did not feel like mystery. It felt like grief wearing discipline. Because after my wife died, I learned that being right does not matter if the people in charge stop being good. No one spoke. Even Marcus, behind the glass, seemed to sense the room had turned beyond his reach. Claire swallowed slowly, the phone still glowing in her hand. And Clause 17b? Ethan's eyes returned to the contract on the table. It is not just a bad clause. It is a doorway. Once you sign, Marcus and Conrad can steer the company, sell the data, bury the risk, and leave your name on the wreckage. Claire's pride had no clever answer left. Only the truth did. And the truth was standing before her with a little girl's backpack in one hand and a warning in the other. Claire canceled the signing with one sentence, and the boardroom erupted without anyone raising a hand. This meeting is paused until independent counsel reviews Clause 17b. Warren Pike lowered himself into his chair, as if his bones had finally remembered their age. Marcus stood at the far end of the table, smiling too hard, speaking too quickly. Claire, that is reckless. Conrad will walk. Then let them walk, she said. I would rather lose a deal than sign a trap. The words moved through the room like a match touched to paper. Phones came out. Assistants hurried. Attorneys whispered in tight circles. Ethan remained in the hallway with Lily, close enough to hear the panic, far enough to remain unwanted by it. His daughter leaned against his side. Can we go home now? She asked. Ethan looked at the rain sliding down the glass beyond reception. Soon, sweetheart. Claire stepped out, her face still composed but her breath less steady than before. I need to get downtown. My outside counsel is at our lower office. If Marcus tries to force a board vote, I need certified review before noon. Ethan nodded once. Then we leave now. Marcus appeared behind her. Claire, think very carefully before you let this man drive you anywhere else. Ethan did not look at him. She already is. Marcus's smile vanished for half a second, and that half second said more than anger ever could. They took the private elevator down in silence. Lily held Claire's tablet in both hands, watching the city traffic map glow red across Midtown. Claire noticed the child studying the screen. Do you like maps? Lily shrugged. Daddy says maps are just promises people have not kept yet. Claire glanced at Ethan. He watched the elevator numbers descend, expression unreadable. In the garage below Whitmore Tower, the air smelled of wet concrete, gasoline, and cold metal. Their sedan waited beneath a flickering fluorescent light. Ethan stopped before opening the door. Something was different. Not obvious. Not dramatic. Just a quiet wrongness in the way the car sat, the way the front wheel angled a little too loosely, the way a thin wire shadow showed where no shadow belonged. Do not get in, he said. Claire froze. Lily obeyed immediately. Ethan knelt beside the front tire and slid his fingers beneath the wheel well. Claire stepped closer. What is it? Something that was not here 20 minutes ago. He pulled free a small tracking device no bigger than a matchbox, its green light blinking once against his palm. Lily whispered, Is that bad? Ethan closed his hand around it. It means someone is afraid of the truth arriving on time. Claire's face went pale, not from fear but recognition. Marcus. Ethan opened the hood and checked the engine bay with the calm precision of a man reading a familiar prayer. Nothing in his movements was showy. He tested, listened, adjusted, and removed a second device clipped near the electronic brake control line. Not dangerous when untouched, but enough to trigger delays, warnings, and a forced service lockout before they reached downtown. Claire watched his hands, the same hands she had dismissed as belonging only on a steering wheel, moving through wires and sensors as though he had written their language himself. How did you know? She asked. Ethan wiped rainwater and grease from his fingers with an old towel. People who cheat contracts usually cheat clocks too. He closed the hood. They do not need to stop you forever. They only need to make you late. Claire looked toward the garage cameras. We can call security. You should. He opened Lily's door, then Claire's. But first, you need to be in that office before Marcus rewrites the story. The garage door lifted, revealing Manhattan washed in gray light. Ethan guided the sedan out carefully, not fast, not reckless, just certain. Behind them, the black Escalade rolled from the curb into traffic again. Claire saw it this time without being told. Her voice softened. Mr. Walker. Yes, ma'am. Are we being followed? Ethan's eyes stayed on the road. No, a pause settled over the car, heavy and clean. We are being hunted by people who think dignity drives slowly. The sedan moved south through Manhattan with the quiet urgency of a confession. Ethan did not race the lights or weave through lanes like a man trying to prove himself. He drove with control, reading gaps before they opened, taking side streets before sirens bent traffic into knots, letting the old car become something steadier than the city around it. Claire sat behind him with her phone in one hand and the tracking device in the other, its tiny green light now dead against her palm. For years she had trusted numbers because numbers did not flatter, did not gossip, did not smile while hiding knives. But that morning, numbers had almost betrayed her through people who knew exactly how to dress greed in legal language. Outside counsel says they can certify the clause in 20 minutes, she said. Marcus just called an emergency board vote for 11:45. Ethan glanced at the dashboard clock. Then he is afraid you found more than one clause. Lily looked up from the traffic map glowing on Claire's tablet. There is a faster way by the river. Claire turned to her. You know the city too? Lily shook her head. Daddy taught me patterns. Cars are like people. They tell you where they want to go before they go there. For the first time all morning, Claire smiled, but it was small, touched with sadness. Your father teaches you well. Ethan said nothing, yet his shoulders softened by less than an inch. They reached the Lower Whitmore office on Water Street at 11:18. The rain had thinned into a bright mist, and the East River looked like wrinkled steel beneath the clouds. Claire stepped out first, no longer barking orders, no longer treating the curb like a stage built for her authority. She held the door for Lily. That small act would not have mattered to most people, but Ethan saw it, and Claire knew he saw it. Inside, the office was older than the tower, with lower ceilings, warmer wood, and framed photographs from Whitmore Mobility's earliest years, when the company still built shuttle routes for hospitals and school districts before venture capital taught it to speak in valuations instead of service. Outside counsel, a calm woman named Denise Carver, waited in a conference room with 2 paralegals and a pot of coffee nobody touched. Claire placed the contract on the table. Clause 17B. Denise read it once. Then again. Her mouth tightened. This transfers voting control immediately. It also isolates liability under your name and current management. Whoever pushed this through knew exactly what they were doing. Claire closed her eyes for 1 second. That was all the grief she allowed herself. Can you certify that? Yes. Marcus's voice suddenly came through the speaker system from the video call, already open on the wall screen. He had joined early, smiling from the boardroom uptown, surrounded by directors who looked impatient and uneasy. Claire, I hope this field trip has given you enough theater for one morning. We are proceeding with the vote. Claire looked at Ethan. The room followed her gaze. Marcus noticed and laughed once. Is your driver joining legal strategy now? A few board members chuckled out of discomfort, not humor. Ethan stood near the door, his jacket still damp, his hands clean but marked faintly by grease along the nails. He could have stayed silent. He could have walked away. But quiet dignity is not the same as disappearance. Claire lifted her chin. Mr. Walker, please come here. Marcus's smile weakened. Warren Pike leaned closer to his camera, his face pale with recognition. Ethan stepped into view. The room on the screen went still. Good morning, Ethan said. Marcus leaned back. This is absurd. Ethan placed the 2 removed devices on the table beside the contract. A tracking unit. A brake control delay trigger. A revised merger packet. A clause that moves control but leaves liability behind. 3 tools, 1 pattern. Denise looked up sharply. You can connect those? Ethan nodded toward the screen. Ask Mr. Hale why short positions against Whitmore Mobility were opened through a shell account 90 minutes before the revised packet was sent. Marcus's face lost its polish. You have no authority to ask me anything. Ethan's voice stayed low, almost gentle. No. But the truth does. Warren Pike stood slowly in the boardroom uptown. Let him speak. No one laughed now. Not one person. For a moment, the video call held 2 rooms inside one silence. Uptown, the board sat beneath white light and glass walls, surrounded by the expensive stillness of power interrupted. Downtown, Claire stood beside a table marked by evidence, rainwater, coffee steam, and one man who had never asked to be seen. Ethan did not raise his voice. He did not point. He did not accuse with anger. He simply connected the pattern piece by piece, the way a careful mechanic might lay out parts from an engine that had failed because someone lied about maintenance. The revised packet was sent at 9:07 this morning, he said. The short positions were opened at 7:31 through Halbert Street Capital, which lists a Delaware holding company as its managing member. That holding company is tied to a consulting firm used by Conrad Financial on 3 previous acquisitions. Marcus gave a thin laugh. Speculation. Ethan nodded once. Then you will not mind opening the beneficial ownership records for the board. The laugh disappeared. Denise Carver's paralegal was already typing. Claire watched Marcus through the screen, and for the first time since she had known him, his confidence looked borrowed. Warren Pike leaned toward his microphone. How do you know where to look? Ethan's eyes moved to the old photographs on the downtown office wall, to the first Whitmore shuttle parked outside a children's hospital 20 years earlier, to a company that had once believed transportation was a promise to ordinary people. Because I built systems for men who promised cities they would make roads safer, faster, fairer. Then I watched some of those men learn how to hide greed inside complexity. No one interrupted him now. Lily sat in a chair near the window, swinging her feet quietly, her stuffed rabbit in her lap. Claire saw her watching her father not with surprise, but with trust. A child knows the truth of a parent long before the world gives it a title. Denise looked up from her laptop. The Shell account links back to an executive discretionary trust. She paused, eyes narrowing. Marcus, your name is on the administrative filing. A sound moved through the boardroom uptown, not quite a gasp, not quite a whisper, more like the air leaving a room that had finally understood its own danger. Marcus stood. That is being taken out of context. Claire's voice was calm. Then put it back in context. He opened his mouth, but nothing worthy came out. Ethan stepped back from the table as if the truth no longer needed his hands to hold it up. Warren Pike removed his glasses. I owe you an apology, Mr. Walker. Years ago, I sat on a federal advisory panel and watched you explain how transit data could save lives if companies had the courage not to abuse it. Claire turned slowly. That was you. Ethan looked down. That was another life. Warren shook his head. No. That was the life before people stopped listening. Marcus tried one last time, his voice sharper now because polish had failed him. Are we really going to let a man who vanished from his own company lecture us about responsibility? Ethan's expression changed, not with rage, but with grief disciplined into grace. I vanished because my wife, Hannah, died after a safety warning was delayed by executives who did not want bad data affecting a quarterly report. I signed off on the system that found the warning. They signed off on ignoring it. The room became so quiet that Claire heard the rain ticking against the downtown windows. Ethan continued softer. After that, I stopped believing titles proved character. I raised my daughter. I fixed cars. I drove people who never asked my name. And I learned that dignity is not what people call you when they need something. It is what remains when they think you are nobody. Claire felt the memory of her own words burn through her. I need a driver, not a sermon. She looked at Ethan, then at Lily, then at the board that had nearly traded thousands of employees for a clean-looking lie. The vote is cancelled, Claire said. The merger is suspended. Marcus Hale is relieved of authority pending investigation. Warren nodded. One by one, the board members followed. Marcus sat down slowly, the color drained from his face, while the silence he had tried to control finally belonged to someone else. Claire turned to Ethan. I misjudged you. Ethan picked up Lily's backpack. Most people do. She swallowed. And you still helped me. He looked toward his daughter, then back at Claire with a tired kindness that felt older than forgiveness. My little girl was in the car. I want her to grow up in a world where good people do not stay quiet just because proud people are loud. By noon, the rain had stopped and Manhattan looked rinsed clean in the pale light that followed storms. Inside the lower Whitmore office, no one celebrated loudly. There were no champagne glasses, no triumphant speeches, no flashing cameras waiting in the lobby. The people who had almost lost their company sat in small clusters, speaking softly, as if they understood that survival was not the same as victory unless it made them better. Marcus Hale was escorted from the board call by process, not spectacle, his access suspended, his accounts frozen, his name handed to investigators who would follow the paper trail he thought was too complicated for anyone to read. Claire watched it happen without pleasure. A few hours earlier she might have mistaken that feeling for weakness. Now she knew it was something closer to responsibility. Ethan stood near the window with Lily, showing her how the river traffic moved after rain, how ferries adjusted their paths, how tugboats left small lines in the water that widened slowly behind them. "Everything leaves a trail," Lily said. Ethan smiled. "Most things do." Claire approached with a folder in her hands, but this time she did not hold it like a weapon. "The board wants to speak with you formally," she said. "They want to offer you a position. Chief Ethics and Safety Officer. Full authority over data use, system warnings, and public risk review." Ethan looked at the folder, then at Lily. "That sounds like a very expensive apology." Claire accepted the words without flinching. "It is partly that. But it is also necessary." "Necessary for who?" "For the company. For the people who ride in vehicles connected to our systems. For the employees who almost became footnotes in a deal. For me." Her voice softened on the last two words, not enough to become fragile, just enough to become true. Ethan did not reach for the folder. "I spent years trying to disappear from rooms like this." "I know. No, Ms. Whitmore. You know the headline. You do not know the cost." Claire looked through the glass at Lily, who was tracing shapes in the fog left on the window. "Then let me earn the right to understand it slowly." That answer surprised him. Not because it was grand but because it was humble. Silence settled between them, warm now instead of tense. At 3:45 that afternoon, Ethan drove Lily home in the same old sedan, with Claire sitting in the back seat not as a commander, not as a woman above him, but as someone who had asked permission to come along. They stopped at a small cemetery in Queens where the grass was damp and the flags near the iron fence moved gently in the clean wind. Ethan carried white lilies. Lily carried the stuffed rabbit. Claire carried nothing but respect. At Hannah Walker's grave, Ethan stood quietly for a long time. He did not explain his grief. He did not perform forgiveness for anyone watching. He simply placed the flowers down and brushed a few wet leaves from the stone with his bare hand. Claire read the name, the dates, and the small engraved line beneath them. She believed roads should bring people home. Her eyes filled, but she did not make the moment about her tears. "We are starting a safety foundation," she said quietly. "Not for publicity. Not under my name. Under hers if you will allow it." Ethan closed his eyes. Lily slipped her hand into his. The wind moved across the cemetery with the gentleness of a prayer that had waited years to be spoken. "She would have liked that," Ethan said. Weeks later, Whitmore Mobility changed before the market understood why. Risk warnings could no longer be buried. Employee protections were tied to executive bonuses. Every contract required an ethics review before signature. And in a modest office with no nameplate bigger than anyone else's, Ethan Walker returned to the work he once loved, not because the world finally recognized him, but because recognition was never the point. Claire learned to lead with less noise and more truth. Lily learned that her father's quiet was not sadness alone, but strength under discipline. And the people who had laughed at a temporary driver remembered the day a man with worn boots, a child's backpack, and grease beneath his nails reminded an entire boardroom that dignity does not need a title, grace does not need permission, and the person holding the steering wheel may be the only one brave enough to keep everyone from taking the wrong road.